Ayurveda and Alchemy. This is printed in ayurvryog.org. For many, Ayurveda is associated with natural remedies based on herbs, massage, and cleansing treatments, and above all with a healthy lifestyle of balanced nutrition and self-care. Ayurveda is indeed all of that, but also much more. One of Ayurveda's less well-known aspects is its historical connection with Indian alchemy, or Rasashastra. The medical elements of Rasashastra survive to this day as they've been incorporated into formal Ayurvedic education in India. Rasashastra is considered a subsidiary discipline of Ayurveda and a specialist practice with a range of traditional formulations produced by pharmaceutical companies and available as over-the-counter and prescription medicines. Historically, Ayurveda and Rasashastra were separate disciplines, each with their own body of literature. The first Ayurvedic works were compiled in the early centuries CE, while Sanskrit works on the practice of alchemy started appearing around the 10th century CE. Over time, demarcations between the two literatures and the practices described in them became less clear. The Ayurvedic works, especially the early ones, cover a wide range of topics, including philosophical and religious content, and their main focus is always on medicine. They describe how to diagnose disorders, explain the causes of disease, and lay out strategies for the preservation of health and the alleviation or cure of disease. The early alchemical works describe the worldview, aims, and activities of alchemists, and much of their content is dedicated to procedures for producing the central product of the alchemical endeavor, or the elixir. The treatises propose a variety of outcomes from the intake of elixirs, ranging from improved health and longevity, to the attainment of superhuman powers, to immortality, spiritual liberation, and transcendence. Even the earliest alchemical works show knowledge of and concern with medicine, broadly relying on Ayurvedic categories such as the humoral theory of disease causation. Later alchemical works expanded their focus on medicine, sometimes to the near exclusion of alchemical aims. At the same time, medical treatises started incorporating elements originally developed in alchemical works. The intersection of medicine and alchemy is atrochemistry, a medicine using substances central to alchemical practice, and also adopting original alchemical procedures for processing substances. This is part of the alchemy that has survived into modern Rasashastra. One of the oldest Sanskrit alchemical treatises states that, with one exception, what is better than the ageless and deathless body that is the seat of all kinds of knowledge, that is the root of righteousness, prosperity, pleasure, and liberation? Who is worn out with aging and subdued by afflictions such as cough, respiratory disease, etc., and whose mental and sensory functioning is impeded, cannot achieve absorption or samadhi. Alchemical tests also show a general concern with health and medicine. When they introduce ingredients for alchemical processes, very often they describe the medicinal efficacy of substances together with their other characteristics. For example, a certain type of iron may be praised for its ability to bind mercury, an essential step in the making of mercurial elixirs, but also be valued for its rejuvenating properties and its ability to counter disorders of the liver. Descriptions of how to process raw substances to make them suitable as an ingredient of the alchemical elixir are often followed by compound recipes with medicinal applications. The most important of alchemical ingredients is the mercury, and it's also considered the most powerful medicine of all. A saying about mercury found in variations in most alchemical works states that, having thickened, it cures disease, bound gives liberation, while killed or made into ash, it makes immortal. What promotes compassion more than mercury? And there is also mention of more specific diseases that are addressed with medicinal substances such as sulfur, gold, mica, and others. The disease categories referred to are for the most part well known from Ayurveda. For example, the Rasashastra describes the preparation of sulfur. One should eat 2 niska of purified sulfur that was melted in an iron vessel, smeared with clarified butter, stirred with a ladle smeared with clarified butter. It cures diseases such as wasting disease and above all leprosy. Sulfur mixed with equal part of black pepper and 6 parts of the 3 myrobalans are taken with the root of laburnarium, completely cures skin diseases. The proper preparation of substances is emphasized. For example, the Rasashastra describes how to make ash of gold, which if properly prepared can be used to treat several serious diseases. The ash properly obtained from gold, administered with 2 gunja or 24 milligrams of black pepper and clarified butter, destroys exhaustion because of low digestion, dyspnea, cough, and lack of appetite when imbibed. It increases the body's vital element, Ujjadhatu, gives strength, removes anemia, and enhances virility. It removes all kinds of poisons and toxins and cures chronic intestinal disorders. On the other hand, there's plenty of warnings about using substances that are not prepared correctly, since the use of raw, unprocessed materials would cause diseases. For example, the Rasashastra notes that warnings about not using unprocessed substances that are later picked up in the Ayurvedic literature. Indeed, the concept of having to process and especially purify sadhana materials, sadhana, before their use first occurs in Ayurvedic texts around the 11th century, clearly as a result of engagement with alchemical thought. Later, medical works such as the Sargahar Samhita, the Bhava Praksa, and the Yoga Nakara quote or paraphrase the earlier alchemical works or descriptions of the medical actions of substances, procedures for processing materials, and recipes. While later medical works freely adopt materials from alchemical texts and vice versa, intertextuality between early alchemical works and medical works is rare. In fact, There seems to be only one clear instance of an early alchemical work quoting an Ayurvedic work. In the Rasashastra, the alchemical text that dates to about the 12th century repeats a verse from the Astagharadas Mahita and the Astanga Graha, classic works of Ayurveda, from about the 7th century. The same verse is also found in the 15th century alchemical work Rasa Dharmakaya, and it reads as follows. The depleted tissues of the body of one who eats shalajit, honey, false black pepper, clarified butter, iron, chibolic myrobalan, mercury, and pyrites are replenished within 15 nights, like the moon. In the medical works, the verse was found in the section on Rasayana, example rejuvenation and vitalization therapies. In the Rasasastra, it's part of the final section of the work, in which the transmutation of the practitioner's body through the intake of the elixir is described as the process of Dihavabha in the Rasasastra and Rasayana in other alchemical works. And here, aside from the quotation, we see a deeper connection between the medical and alchemical worlds. In Ayurveda, Rasayana is one of the 8 traditional subject areas of medical knowledge. Most pre-modern Sanskrit medical works dedicate a section to Rasayana therapy treatments that are meant to counter the effects of aging and to prolong life. Medical Rasayana consists of a series of therapeutic interventions that begin with various purgative treatments for inner cleansing, followed by a period of recovery and a specific dietary regimen, concluded by the main medical application, the intake of a tonic over a period of time. The expected results include better general health, rejuvenation, and a prolonged lifespan. In a few instances, the promised results are bolder, and consumers of Rasayana tonics are promised an indefinite extension of lifespan and an indestructible body. In alchemy, Rasayana is the culmination of the alchemical process. It involves preparing the practitioner's body for the intake of the elixir, the final concoction of the elixir, its intake, and the subsequent transformation of the practitioner. The procedures employed in alchemical Rasayana period closely resembles the Rasayana of the medical treatise, especially in the preparations preceding the intake of the tonic or elixir. There's an overlap in the concept of inner cleansing, in the substances used for purging, and in the accompanying dietary advice. Also, procedures in both medical and alchemical Rasayana can span long periods of time. The main difference between the two lies in the aims, medical Rasayana being predominantly therapeutic, alchemical Rasayana having spiritual effects. It seems obvious that alchemical Rasayana was modeled on the general structure of the much older medical Rasayana. Here we have a trajectory from medicine to alchemy, but the relationship between medicine and alchemy went both ways, with Ayurveda integrating alchemy's iiochemical knowledge and Rasashastra, emphasizing its medical elements more and more, to the point where a sharp distinction between medical and alchemical literature becomes difficult. The interaction of Ayurveda and Rasashastra over time has been intimate and multi-layered. To study one discipline without the other is therefore to miss what is in fact a deeply entangled history of divergent and intersecting concerns, goals, and technologies.